We're going to do this a little backwards. President's about to speak, President Trump, about this outrageous phony fraud case. Here we go.
In my opinion, the country.
Louder,
the New York
please.
State judge just ruled that he's crooked as you could get. And a lot of people expected something like this, but not for the amount. But this is a very dishonest man. This is a man that's been overturned already on this case 4 times. But a crooked New York State judge just ruled that I have to pay a fine of $355 million for having built a perfect company. Great cash, great buildings, great everything. It affects New York. It's mostly talking about New York, where we have a totally corrupt attorney general. She campaigned on the fact that I will get Trump, I will get Trump. Everybody's seen it. They've all seen it. Well, we'll be appealing, but more important than that, this is Russia, this is China, this is the same game. It all comes out of the DOJ, it all comes out of Biden. It's a switch hunt against his political opponent, the likes of which our country has never seen before. You see it in third world countries, banana republics, but you don't see it here. So I just want to say this. You build a great company. There was no fraud. The banks all got their money, 100%. They love Trump. They testified that Trump is great customer, one of our best customers. They testified beautifully. And the judge knows that. He's just a corrupt person. And we knew that from the beginning. We knew it right from the beginning because we wouldn't give it to the commercial division. This judge thought Mar-a-Lago is worth $18 million, and it's worth anywhere from 50 to 100 times that amount. So we realized that. He ruled against me before he even got the case. He ruled against me. He said I was guilty. He didn't know what I was guilty of before he even got the case. And Letitia James, that's another case altogether. She's a horribly corrupt attorney general, and it's all having to do with election interference. There were no victims because the banks made a lot of money. They made $100 million. And by the way, I paid approximately $300 million in taxes as the migrants come in and they take over New York. I paid over this period of years over $300 million in taxes. And they want me out. Oh, let's see if we can get them out. These are radical left Democrats. They're lunatics. And it's election interfering. So I just want to thank you for being here. We'll appeal. We'll be successful, I think, because, frankly, if we're not successful, New York State is gone. People are moving out of New York State. And because of this, they're going to move out at a much faster rate. They used a statute. It's a consumer fraud statute that's never been used for a thing like this before. They used it on me because I'm running for president. I'm beating Biden by a lot. We're beating not only the Republicans, we're beating Biden by a lot. The poll came out today, we're up 20 points on Biden. If I weren't running, none of this stuff would have ever happened. None of these lawsuits would have ever happened. Nothing would. I would have had a nice life. But I enjoy this life for a different reason. We're going to make America great again. These are corrupt people. These are people that shouldn't be allowed to do the things they do. And they're using this as weaponization against a political opponent who's up a lot in the polls and always will be, because I'm competing with a man who can't put two sentences together, who doesn't know what he's doing. And we're heading into a third world war because of this guy. We have to win this election. They're doing everything possible to step in our way, but we're not going to stand for it. So thank you very much. We will get back to work. It's a ridiculous award. Listen, a fine of $355 million for doing a perfect job, for having paid back a loan with no defaults, with no problems. The banks were totally, at the trial they testified. We had an expert witness from the Stern School at NYU that made a statement. And I was very honored by his statement. He's one of the most respected people anywhere in the country for doing this kind of thing, expert witness. He said, this is one of the greatest financial statements I have ever witnessed before. And he talked about even the detail. So my numbers actually were extremely conservative. They saw this, so what the judge did is he brought down certain values like Mar-a-Lago, made it ridiculous. But the expert, after having all of this, testified it's one of the best financial statements he's ever seen. And I was honored by that. But I also knew we have a corrupt judge. He's not a respected man. And again, I said before, he's been overturned on this case by the appellate division 4 times already. It's a record. Nobody's ever been overturned on one case 4 times. And I think very importantly, and I think ultimately the most important, We've employed tens of thousands of people in New York, and we pay taxes like few other people have ever paid in New York, and they don't care about that. It's a state that's going bust. It's a state that's going bust because everybody's leaving, and it's all headed up by Biden, who's destroying our country. So this is Russia, this is China, this is what you've been reading about all your lives, and it's happening right here in our country. Thank you very much. We will stop it. We will make America great again. You have my word. Thank you very much.
President Trump,
you know, ladies and gentlemen, my heart goes out to this man, to this family. It's a statute that's never been used like this before in the history of New York. There's not a claimant. There's no fraud. There's not a disgruntled bank or insurance company. You knew that this is what they wanted to do, and they wanted his taxes. They wanted his corporate records. You knew that this is where it was heading, to try and destroy him. And what they've done here, anybody who's been to New York or even driven by New York or driven through New York, you see a fantastic horizon of skyscrapers. And in the 70s and 80s, when a lot of people abandoned New York and gave up on New York, Trump dug in. He has built fantastic buildings all throughout New York. He's taken areas of New York that were basically abandoned, and he built them up as well. He makes the point, he's right, that he's employed tens of thousands of people, which he has, paid enormous amount of taxes directly, as did the people who worked for him. And this is what they do to him. Now, I happen to think, although I don't know based on Supreme Court precedent, and I don't even know if it's possible, but to me, at least conceptually, this is a violation of the Equal Protection Clause in the 14th Amendment. I'm a little careful. I was thinking before I put that out, because everybody comes up with their own theories. But when this is a statute that's never been used this way before, when you have a judge like this, it's not really a trial of any sort. You have his law clerk, who's now running to be a Democrat judge. These are elected people at the local level, doing what they think they need to do to get elected. There's something horrendously wrong with this. And even on appeal, it'll be to mostly Democrat judges. There's a secondary effect that this has that is very and gravely dangerous. A jury or jurors, prosecutors or judges see a holding like this, a ruling like this, and it gets easier and easier to rule against Donald Trump, the former president, the candidate for the presidency. So it becomes less of a shock and becomes more of a routine. And this is what's happening in these dark blue cities, in these states. You should have no respect for these judges. You should have no respect for these prosecutors. None. The case in Manhattan that will start on March 25th is a completely bogus case. This civil fraud case is a completely bogus case. And yet they're brought because they know. As Mao knew, as Xi knows, as Stalin knew, as Putin knows, as they all know. They control the outcome. I've been calling these, as you know, Potemkin courtrooms. They give the appearance of a judicial system, but they're not a judicial system. They go through the motions, and they barely do that. They wanted his taxes. They found nothing. They didn't find a crime when they went through his corporate records. This is a huge corporation that's done business for half a century. And this is the best they can do. But it doesn't matter. They don't have to really prove their case. They just have to throw stuff against the wall, and the judges will take it from there. This judge is a freak and a fraud. He's an elected local judge. He's highly disrespected. But he's elected, and there he is. He gets the case. He looks at the papers that were filed, and based on the papers, without Trump, his lawyers, anybody even present, he finds Donald Trump guilty. Based on the summary judgment, just based on the filings. Guilty. There's no jury, not that it would matter probably. And so Donald Trump walks into that courtroom on day one and he's guilty. His sons are guilty. The company's guilty. They're guilty. Before he ever opens his mouth, before he ever enters the courtroom, before his lawyers can ever speak. On a statute that's never been used like this, ever. Where no complaint has been made by any party. Where the Attorney General, Letitia James, she's looking and looking and looking. And she finds this obscure statute that's never been used before in a case like this and uses it. It's like the January 6th case, the Klan Act of 1871. We call it the Klan Act of 1871, but it's actually the Klan Act of 1870. Just to put a fine point on it, that's when it was introduced. But it was passed in 1871. Fine. You can actually call it the Civil Rights Act of 1868, because that's what it was. But it was the Klan Act. And then they used the Enron law that has nothing to do with this. The federal contractor law has nothing to do with any of it. You see in Georgia, putting aside the clown show, a RICO statute? Because people are lobbying the Secretary of State? Not threatening him, lobbying him? Because there is a second group, a slate of electors from that state and others, which has been done in American history? That's a crime? To obstruct, to prevent an outcome of an election? Now, why is this all happening now? Is it because of Donald Trump? No, it's because of the very people who were spying on him when he became a candidate. The very people who tried to impeach him twice simply because he was president. The very people who launched a criminal investigation against him in the Mueller, quote-unquote, probe, with Russia collusion, which we know was hatched by our own intelligence agencies with the knowledge of Barack Obama. And so when you have somebody, really bottom dwellers like Nikki Haley saying, Trump's called the chaos, Trump is going to be found guilty, we're going to be involved in this, so Trump is the one, Trump's the problem. Quite the contrary. He's the victim. She's giving aid and comfort to the corrupt Democrat so-called justice system in these blue states. At every level, they're trying to bankrupt Trump. They're trying to destroy his reputation with these libel cases, both in New York. We have another New York case involving non-disclosure agreements. They call it hush money. Really? And the companies that call it hush money, they've paid quote-unquote hush money for non-disclosure agreements too. But they're doing it because they're going to have a Democrat jury. They already have a partisan Democrat judge who's actually contributed to the Biden campaign. So why not, they figure. So these are radical prosecutors, Soros types, that have no compunction whatsoever about what they're doing. Burn the damn thing down. That's their view.